What is up, Badgerverse? It's Wasabi Boat Research. I am here with Tritium, who is in between ETH Denver festivities. I've just grabbed him for a few minutes here because we need to talk about the bveCVX roadmap because we put out a Twitter a graphic that had kind of like the steps of what's coming down the road for this product, but just wanted to talk through each step to give us a little bit more color on each one of these items. So, what do you say? Why don't we get into it?
Yeah, sounds good. How's it going? Happy Friday.
All right, here we go. So, the first item on the roadmap is we have a proposal in front of the Badger Council to change the yield for depositors in the bveCVX LP vault. So, that is the vault where you, if you're providing liquidity on curve between CVX and bveCVX, and then depositing that LP token in Badger, right now you're just getting a flat Badger yield. But what's going to change with that vault?
Okay, so the real problem with LP right now is that it doesn't scale, right? So the way that the current system is set up, the BVE CVX LP, right, which is CVX and BVE CVX in a curve pool, is set up such that it receives a fixed amount of Badger each week. I'm not sure exactly how much it is. I think it's like 10,000 or something. And so that's then how much emissions it gets, right? So what that means is that when there's no liquidity, right, the yields are very high. But then when somebody, like what happened last week, when somebody pumps in a bunch of liquidity, the yields fall below BVE CVX, and it creates, a sticky situation for users. So fundamentally, what we're going to do is instead of leaving all of the yields for BVE CVX, now if you're in BVE CVX LP, this change will make it so that all of the tokens that are BVE CVX in the LP, right? Your LP is a mix of CVX and BVE CVX, but all of the BVE CVX and all of the native rewards, so all the CVX CRV and the CRV, the non-native rewards, all of those tokens will flow through um, to the holders of BVE CVX, which then should allow it to, first of all, scale well. And second of all, allows us to use that Badger premium, right? That extra Badger we're paying is a way to like adjust how much liquidity there is without ever ending up in a situation where we like are super non-competitive.
So is the Badger amount going there going to be dynamic after this change because to try to keep it at a target APY, or how's that going to work?
That's not the plan now. So the plan is what will be dynamic is the amount of bveCVX and bCVX CRV that are going to that pool, right? That will be based on the percentage of what's in the pool, right? So if the pool is 50-50, right, you'll get 50% of the BVE CVX rewards, right, of those of BVE CVX and bCVX CRV paid out, right? If like we were, let's say 2 months ago, the pool is like 80% BVE CVX, then it's not as liquid, right? But you're getting 80% of the rewards.
All right. And this is a governance action that's in front of the council right now. So I guess they're talking about it. Do you have any kind of like ETA on when this would be actually shipped?
So yeah, I mean it's on a roadmap to ship for in 2 weeks, right? Next week we're doing Boost, and then in 2 weeks we're going to do this. Yeah, so in about 2 weeks, it's with the council for discussion. I think there's already agreement. I think for the team, like we kind of intended it to be this way from the beginning, but we just didn't have the technology in place, right? And now we've got the tech done. We're entering into like a new epoch for bveCVX. We really want to grow liquidity so that some other stuff works, which I think we'll talk about a little later. And so it makes sense to get this done now.
Got it. Okay, so then the next item coming down the road is Badger Boost for BVE CVX. So on the forum and snapshot, you can see BIP 85 passed overwhelmingly in the last week or so. So can you give us a quick TLDR on what's happening with Boost and BVE CVX?
Sure. So basically, like what we want is to have some affinity between bveCVX and Bitcoin depositors. And like particularly as we've increased the yields on bveCVX, right? As bveCVX has become more competitive, what we've seen surprisingly is that a lot of like our large Bitcoin depositors have pulled their CVX out, and a lot of like a lot of CVX is coming into BVE CVX that maybe isn't even like depositing Bitcoin, right? And so maybe that's okay. But in our mind, it would be best to have affinity. So what we're doing is allowing bveCVX to also be counted as a native in Boost. So basically, you'll get, it's a little bit complicated, but the minimum of half of your bveCVX USD value or half of your Badger CVX value added to your Boost. So let's say you've got, to make it really easy, $1,000 in Badger, and $1,000 in CVX, right? Half of both of those is 500, and you'd take the smaller of the two, which would be 500. So you'd get the 1,000 for the Badger plus an extra 500 for the CVX.
And so that means your total boost native would be 1,500, which means you would be able to get max Badger boost on $1,500 worth of Bitcoin or try crypto or other non-native assets.
That's correct.
Cool.
Yeah. So basically, just I think for one of the things we've been talking a lot about with Boost and like large depositors is that the Badger market cap is small enough that you can't actually get a big boost on a lot of Bitcoin, right? This allows you to, okay, like maybe you buy $5 million in Badger and $10 million in Convex, both of which are reasonable things to do for a large depositor, right? You've got $10 million in Boost. You're also pumping the Badger yields quite, or the Bitcoin yields quite a bit with the CVX influence. And so it makes it easier for big holders. And then actually, surprisingly, a lot of our small holders are really excited about it too, because they've been accumulating this bveCVX for a long time and it's yielding well for them. But to also see their boost go up is nice.
Got it. And what I'm curious to hear more about your take on the kind of like relationship between the CVX depositors in Badger and like the large Bitcoin depositors. Like, do you think these are, I guess maybe we had thought that they would be the same person, but it's actually kind of like two different market segments. Is that how you're thinking about it now?
Kind of. I mean, they were, right? Like, what happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks is that, the two giga whales that had a bunch of CVX in our system both pulled out. My understanding is the reason they pulled out wasn't about Badger, but was more a capital allocation thing, and people are de-risking, and I guess VCs don't like Convex as much as they used to. But again, more and more we're moving away from that affinity, right? And so I think it makes sense to try to do this boost thing and see if that like helps. And then if not, like maybe we should accept that that's like what the market is, right? That Bitcoin holders don't want to hold Convex and they don't want to support their yields, and the Convex holders like have better things to farm than Bitcoin.
Got it. All right. So this week we're doing the governance on the yield redirection. Then the week after that, I think that's basically our timeline for when this boost change is going to happen, like next week or
Yep.
second or third week of February. And then,
So I think just to delay it out, the plan is to figure out the all the stuff for the yield redirection this week, implement boost next week, implement the yield redirection the following week, right? And then that next week, which is the first week in March, start doing some stuff with Rari.
all right. And that brings us to the crown jewel, the last item of the roadmap, which is bveCVX being used as collateral on Rari. So when we published this roadmap, I was shocked, or not shocked, but surprised to see that like this is the item that got the most interest, like on Twitter and other social media. So people are excited to be able to increase their capital efficiency of their Convex by using it as collateral on Rari. So can you tell us how that works and kind of like how it fits into these other pieces, like how it's connected with the LP?
So I think the deal with Rari is, right, that people clearly like what people want, and one of the things that Badger is working towards being able to offer is additional utility on top of vault tokens, right? So it would be, if you think about like MIM, for example, or like then they tend to have this Yearn vault, right? So in the Yearn vault, like you put it in, it's accruing some interest, that money goes up, and it's all kind of magically handled, right? Because Badger is partner first and we don't auto compound, we can't really do that. But what we can do is still give you the rewards for your tokens that are somewhere else. So, for example, and what we're working on is a situation where you can put your bveCVX in Rari, in some way or another, Rari Capital, right? It cannot be used, it cannot be borrowed, so it's only collateral, right? But then you can actually borrow dollars or another coin. You can use that bveCVX as collateral, while still receiving rewards, right? And then do something else with that money. And this is also potentially a play that we can start working on with like our Bitcoin vaults or try crypto vaults. So that, the challenge with bveCVX and Rari is that, part of lending protocols is the need to liquidate. So if you fall under your collateral ratio, right, and there's a liquidation event, liquidators need some way to swap whatever the collateral is for dollars, right, in order to make the whole thing work. The challenge with bveCVX is that while it's semi-liquid, right, it's not necessarily super predictable if you're going to be able to withdraw. Luckily, we also have this liquidity pool, right? And so you can always swap through the liquidity pool. And then the challenge is just making sure that there's enough liquidity in the pool to liquidate however much is borrowed there. And so the approach that we're going to take there at first is to allow only the deposit of bveCVX/CVXLP, right? The thing that we just talked about doing the yield redirection for in order to borrow against, and then maybe having a collateral factor of about 35 to 50%. So what that for me means is that you could take, let's say, I guess let's stick with $1,000, right? You could take $1,000, although we're gonna spend a lot of money on gas. We could take $1,000 of CVX and bveCVXLP, right? This mixed thing. Let's assume it's at 50-50. So now we're going to get Badger yield on the full 1,000, right? We're going to get the CVX. We're going to get the Vodium yields on the half of the bveCVX that's there, right? So we're going to get that. And now we can borrow up to 50% of the value of that, let's say, right? And invest in dollars. In my when
Or
I
35%, you said, right?
well, I don't know. We're trying, so like definitely of the single asset right now with the liquidity 35%. But the thought experiment we're going through right now is if everything is liquidity, right, is 50% always enough? So we're still trying to figure that out, right? That's one of those last details that we're in conversations with Rari and liquidators and trying to make sure how to make that safe, but also as useful as possible. So at best, in my mind, what happens is we add this liquidity, maybe at 35 or 50%, right? That promotes a bunch of people to deposit liquidity so that they can borrow some stuff, right? Then we end up having a lot more liquidity. And then once there's enough liquidity and that's all really working well and is, there's a broad base of deposits, we can start looking at actually also allowing single asset bveCVX collateral, right? Maybe at a lower collateral factor. So that we're planning to roll out again. I think the first thing we're going to roll out is the bveCVX LP, and the collateral factor somewhere between 35 and 50%, which should roll out in the first week of March.
Awesome. So let's just like put that all together and talk about the implications for each person. So let me see if I can go through these. So the BVE CVX depositor, right? You're in single-sided CVX, and you want to either have that CVX kind of be supportive of Badger and Bitcoin pools, so you're depositing with us, or you want to have the earn yield on your CVX, but also be able to have some liquidity to get out of that 16-week locking period, right? So that's why you would be in BVE CVX. And if we increase that liquidity, which we've talked about how we're going to do that in the next phase, then you are more and more comfortable depositing more and more CVX into that pool, which helps Badger's yield influence throughout DeFi. Is that basically the implication there?
Yeah, basically. I mean, if we think about this user that you're talking about, let's just start from the very beginning. So I've got CVX and bveCVX. First of all, like it's yielding almost as well or as well as Vodium right now, right? So the other two options that I can have is to get a whole basket of shitcoins from Vodium, where I get all of the shitcoins and have to deal with them, right? Another option is to delegate to the union, which means that I get all the shitcoins, but they sell it and put it into a auto compounding CVX CRV. And then the third option would be to like vote for a few specific projects that I'm interested in. I think a lot of people would prefer to just auto compound their bribes or rewards back into CVX And that's exactly what bveCVX does. So in my mind, like first and foremost, bveCVX should just be competitive, right? If you're a Convex holder, if you want to accumulate Convex, it should just be the simplest, best place to put your CVX. Then on top of that, right, we want to have the liquidity. So the next thing is that you should be able to not have to question so much how much do I put in. You should be able to put lots in and not worry about it so much because there's enough liquidity that you can get out when you want, right? So through incentivizing a lot of the steps that we're taking over the next weeks is to try to make liquidity more attractive and to try to grow that liquidity base. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of think that's it. And then I guess the other thing is whether you have Bitcoin and Badger, or maybe you don't, right? If you've got a bunch of CVX and you're a Badger staker, right, it's gonna, or a Bitcoin staker with some Badger, your boost is gonna go up. And if you don't have any Bitcoin, then you're gonna be looking at a situation where you can deposit some Bitcoin in Badger and actually get some pretty decent yields on it because you've got boost. And so maybe we'll actually also encourage some of these bveCVX only stakers to put some Bitcoin in.
Got it. And we talked about the LP provider. They are going to be getting this added utility because they are going to be able to use it as collateral to borrow stables or BTC or whatever they want on Rari, while also continuing to earn the Badger rewards and get boost.
And get boost, correct. So fundamentally, that's the other thing is you could put in the bveCVX LP, you could borrow a reasonable amount of Bitcoin, or and then deposit that and get a pretty good boost and just like farm some free Bitcoin on top of your CVX. That would be another example of an interesting play.
Awesome. Well, I think that covers the immediate roadmap for bveCVX. I'm just so curious. You're out in the Denver area, and I'm about to head out there in about a week from now. So excited to meet you guys and the rest of the Badger team in person. Give us some Denver alpha. What places in Denver should we check out? Are there places where Badgers are going to be meeting up around ETH Denver? What should we do when we're out there?
A good question. I grew up in Denver, but I haven't really lived here or in Boulder, but I haven't really lived here for 20 years. I've now been here for a day or two, although I've mostly just been badgering on my laptop. I don't really know. We're having a team dinner on Saturday because none of us have ever met, so we're just going to spend a few hours together, actually getting to know each other. But other than that, I've had like a few of our community members, like Commander Freddie, and a few other ones have reached out to me. So I think that's something we should probably figure out over the next week is when we can meet up with the Badger community a little bit. But frankly, I'm just here. I'm going with the flow, man.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait. So if you're listening to this and you're going to be in the Denver area, definitely ping me or ping Tritium, and we'll figure out a way to have like a Badger happy hour or something. So with that, thanks for listening, and talk to y'all soon.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Ciao.